What are you allowed to do on your own property? Well, in America, fewer things all the time. A woman bought this house hoping to turn it into a wedding reception center and bed and breakfast. Instead, it sits there empty because her local government will not let her have a business on her property. Also, one man started farming these oysters. His friends tried them and said, "These are delicious." So he increased production and sold them to others. But now, even though he farms the oysters on his own property and got 7 state permits and licenses, his counties charged him with illegal farming. So here are our 2 criminals. Shelley Goodman owns that empty house. Greg Garrett brought us these oysters. So, Greg, what's the county's problem?
Well, they have this zoning ordinance, about 450 pages.
So on top of all those federal laws I showed before, then there are state laws, and there are city laws and county 400 pages.
Yeah, and so in my case, they came up with a zoning ordinance that they said they could prohibit our oyster farm, even though we have the right to have a pig farm, we have the right to have a buffalo farm, we can grow goats, we can do any type of agriculture.
You're licensed for agriculture and livestock.
They're zoned. We're zoned for agriculture and livestock.
But oysters seemed like less of a threat to the community than buffalo.
Not only are they not a threat, they clean the bay. I mean, we're in a situation where the bay must be cleaned.
How do they clean the bay? How do they clean the water?
Well, each oyster cleans up to 50 gallons of water per day, of seawater per day. That's how the oyster grows. It takes in water and spits it back out, and in that, there's a purification that takes place.
We called the county administrator. They say, we're not doing anything wrong. Here's the law, and yes, he can have livestock. He could have horses. But here's why he can't have oysters. And my very smart producer talked to him for 12 minutes and still has no clue what the law is or what he's talking about. And that's the case with a lot of American law.
Well, it's kind of like the Sadducees and the Pharisees. I mean, if you have enough laws on the books, you can find something that anybody you want to accuse of a crime or you want to accuse of doing something wrong, there is a law out there for you to catch them on. And so that's kind of what they've done.
In the statute, it says, in the event a particular use is not listed, such use shall not be permitted unless the zoning administrator says it's okay. It just gives them the power to run your life.
Yeah, well, that's what I've actually called the China provision. It actually says that even if it's not listed in this book, if it's not listed, if you want to do something on your property and it's not listed in this book, even though it is otherwise legal, even though it is not prohibited, the fact that it's not listed in this book means you cannot do it unless the zoning administrator says that you can.
Gives him a lot of power. Let's go to you, Shelley. You buy a big house, nice looking house on 10 acres with the idea, I mean, you have your own house. You don't even live there.
We don't live there, no. It's 10 acres. It's a 13,000 square foot house. It's really a mansion. It's a beautiful property. It's really, really unique to Chandler. You might find it here in the East Coast more often, but in Arizona you don't see anything like this.
Bed and breakfasts are common here. So you wanted to use it as a small inn and also have some weddings there in a pretty location.
Yes.
And you just assumed you could do that?
Oh, no, we knew we had to get a special use permit. We knew before we purchased the property.
Well, why didn't you get it first?
The property was in foreclosure, and so the bank owned it, and it was dying. The trees were dying. The landscape was all but dead. The house was in disrepair. It had a number of break-ins and vandalism, and so we saved it. We did. We saved it. Yes, we rescued it.
And then you move to say, we want to have some weddings here, and they say no.
That's correct.
Because it might bother the neighbors.
And we went through a year and a half with the city-appointed staff working on regulations for everything from ADA restrictions to fire suppression to make sure, you know, it was safe, and all of those things.
You paid for a traffic study.
Yes, we did.
$3,000.
We had one of the concerns of the neighbors was that we would increase the traffic.
The road handles 35,000 cars a day, so the study said this isn't going to increase the traffic.
There's no entrance into the property other than the main thoroughfare, Kyrene Road, which is an arterial road.
You had to have a sound. What's that?
We did a sound study. We had people come out on a holiday weekend at 10 p.m. And do a baseline sound level, and then they compared that to all of the sound levels of, you know, hundreds of people talking at one time or cars driving.
And that cost even more than $3,000.
Yes, yes.
And we talked to one of your local councilmen, and he thinks he's doing a good job. He's trying. He said, I visited the site twice. I met with you and their lawyer. You have to have a lawyer. Several times. I read hundreds of emails. We had a 5-hour meeting. And then we decided it might bother the neighbors. But even the fact that you have to go through all that says a lot.
Well, you know, we worked with their staff for a year and a half, and we got full approval from the staff, full recommendation from the city's own staff saying that this was a viable property, that it was going to make a great business, and that we had complied with all of the concerns of the neighbors. And the staff regulates those emails and calls from the neighbors. They heard all of the opposition as well. And so to have less than a month with the city council, who makes the final decision, was a little confusing and frustrating as well, to see that they then said no.
And it's now sitting there empty.
It's sitting there empty.
On 10 acres of property where I would think it wouldn't bother other people. Now, presidential candidate George McGovern, liberal Democrat, after he lost, tried to do the same thing, start an inn in Connecticut. And it was a shock to him what he had to go through. He said, I wish during my years in public office I had this firsthand experience about the difficulties business people face. We are choking off business opportunity. I mean, the presidential candidate, they all should try a business to see what you go through.
But so many layers of regulation. I mean, the federal government says that aquaculture, what I'm doing, is agriculture. The state says that aquaculture is agriculture. It's covered under the Department of Agriculture.
But the county says
level.
no, so you're
and the
toast.
county has zoned my land to be able to do agriculture. But somehow oysters are worse than pigs.